your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather, talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather, relentless focus on their body. Sweet feather, sweet feather, what do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather, no sex, just titillation.
Hello.
Hi, Tweety.
How are you, Dr. Pardo?
Good, I've missed you.
And you. And more than anything, I have missed just kind of sitting upright, eating solid food, and feeling good about life. So
Truly.
let's see how that goes.
How are you feeling?
Last night I slept through the night more or less.
Okay.
And acid is at like probably maybe first day of alone status. It's
That's what
much
you're saying.
better. Oh yeah, we're on the first day. We're not dealing with the kind of 12 days in, I'm rolling back and forth, I'm screaming, I'm crying. Why, mommy, why does it burn so bad?
And what have we been doing to neutralize the acid, if I may?
Oh, you must. Not may, must. We started
And
posting-
actually, I will say something I wrote in my notes today.
Oh, of
about
course,
this
yeah,
actual-
no, of course.
I wrote Pascal's heartburn. So
I mean-
we're going to be doing a lot of talk about acid, heart, burn and the acid and the whole, it's actually not irrelevant, but please go on.
It's much too relevant. And
Eerily so.
Eerily so. I don't want to get, I guess we'll talk about it more when it comes up, so we'll talk about it now. Oh, so I'm on Pepcid in the morning. I'm taking some Tum-Tums. I'm basically eating very simple, low acid foods. How are
Let me
you?
know how I can support through this record. Like if you need to end early, if you need to take a break, if you don't feel good, just let me know.
If I want to talk about a totally different book.
Yeah, I mean, we can make talking about this book as we'll set records. We're gonna set records today, I
Okay.
predict, on how quick we get through I'm not saying it's gonna be a short episode, but I'm saying of how quick we get through the actual literal text. I'm really hoping we can be at like Olympic
sure.
level
I'm curious.
qualifiers. Okay.
Also, huge update. I tried to get Martin to watch For All Mankind last night, and he said no. So then we watched the first episode of Nobody Wants This, and he didn't like that either.
This is going to be a great transition into the book because we need to talk about your ability to get your boyfriend to do what you want.
Yeah, that is
Okay,
definitely
and you
true.
are going to have to take a lesson from Jessica and her philosophy on men, which is you have to make them do what you want because they won't do it themselves.
Yeah, that
Or
makes
whatever
sense.
she said. So, okay. Well, should we talk about Sweet Valley High number 52, White Lies, piece of shit book?
Wow. We can.
Did you like it?
No. But I'm trying to bring, I texted
was-
Pardo earlier, I'm trying to bring positive vibes to the podcast because sometimes I'm a negative Nancy.
Oh, that's interesting because I just thought this book was, if I was choosing between books that I had to throw in this is so rude, but if you said to me actually, like, of all your collection of SVH, you have to choose a book to put in the garbage, this would definitely be a contender. Like, I would never, ever, ever miss it.
That's true.
But I still feel positive about discussing it. And I still look forward to the insight that we can find in it and the joy and the beauty. There is some couple things of note in here. So I'm still feeling positive vibes.
Okay.
But this book sucks.
Yeah.
And the cover's a nasty trick, and that's all I'm gonna say. It's a nasty, nasty trick what they did.
I look forward to that.
6-word reviews.
Yeah, I've been toying with this and I don't exactly have it totally down, but it's something like adolescent development isn't always fun,
Interesting.
entertaining. It's that last adjective that I couldn't really decide on. Because there are
Interesting.
many moments in here where I'm like, this is well observed. This is like we could read this in an adolescent development class and pull the characters apart and talk about where they are in their journeys and how they kind of represent typical developmental milestones and all sorts of stuff. And yet that doesn't make it a book I want to talk about or read at all, you know?
Oh, interesting. So you're saying that its insights vis-a-vis adolescent development are accurate and robust, and yet it is not a good read. I'll be curious to hear what your perspectives are. That will be interesting to discuss, but I agree with you. It was not enjoyable to read. Okay, what's mine? Let me think. The Dairy Burger has pinball? Never know.
Were you shocked by that?
I wasn't shocked, but it just made me have follow-up questions of like, what other games do they have?
Yeah.
If they do. Is there more of like an arcade vibe in the back? Like, why aren't we hearing more? Or is it just the pinball machine? There could be a foosball table no one's talking about. Like, what is going on here?
Oh, I don't think there's wow. Okay, this is great. Let's unearth some stuff. In my mind, there is, so I was not shocked there was a pinball table. A foosball table to me would be beyond the pale. Foosball, ping pong, no. I don't think there's any, I think everything is contained.
I think you're right. It's just imagine there's like they have a Pac-Man game or something.
Yeah,
Oh, God,
I can imagine that.
But it's like I want to know.
Asteroids.
I want to know, you know? Well, I think it would be disrespectful to our listeners to read the cliffhanger. I think we should just say what it is.
I was just saying the same thing. I have it queued up, but I don't think we need to.
It's two people we could not care less about are stressed out about something.
And those people are
John Pfeiffer, the sports editor of the newspaper, The Oracle, that of course Liz works at, and they're sort of casual friends. And this girl we're just, I think, hearing about for the first time. I don't remember hearing of her before. Maybe we did they stuck her on the side of lunch at some point. But Jennifer Mitchell, John Pfeiffer, Elizabeth's friend at The Oracle, is in a pissy mood because the girl he has a crush on, Jennifer Mitchell, is interested in this guy, Rick Andover, who we know from many books ago of being a shitty guy. Bad news.
Yeah, that's what we call the Cliff Note.
All right. Well, I guess now we summarize the plot. Which one do you want?
I'm happy to quickly do the B plot, I guess.
Sure.
So AJ and Jessica have been disagreeing more frequently. Jessica has also been kind of acting flirtatiously to some other boys, and had talked about kissing other boys previously, and AJ didn't seem to love that. And so Liz is lizzing all over herself about like, oh, they're too different. How could they possibly be together? They're going to break up, blah, blah, blah. And there are some kind of scheduling and logistical disagreements that happen. And Jessica triumphs in all of them. And then
Between Jessica and AJ,
between Jessica and AJ, of course. Jessica triumphs in all of them. And then by the end of the book, they're still fine and they like each other. And you can disagree in a relationship and have it be fine.
Yeah, I do think there are some interesting things to unpack in that one. Okay, so I'll do the A plot. The A plot is Tweedledee and Tweedle fucking who cares? Okay.
Wait, sorry, just to be clear, who's Tweedledee and who is Tweedle fucking who cares?
I don't care.
Oh, wow.
Take your
It's like
pick.
meta not caring.
Okay. John is crying all the time to Elizabeth about Boo-hoo, Jennifer, and Rick Andover. Elizabeth, as usual, invades other people's lives for no reason. And like is John's shoulder to cry on about this. And for a while she's like gives actually good advice, which is listen, like you can't control people. You just have to be a good friend. Hopefully I agree Rick's an asshole, but hopefully she figures it out herself. You can't really tell people what to do. It probably won't work and she'll just resent you. So you're like, oh, Liz, like, wow, such the restraint. But then John's like, oh, there's Rick. Let me follow him. Liz, come with me. And she's like, okay. Then they follow Rick for no fucking reason. And then they see him steal a guitar. Well, actually, more accurately, what they see is like they look in the window and it's this really funny writing where it's like the guitar stood against the black of the closed store. And then suddenly the guitar disappeared and a hand was raised against it or something. You're like, okay. And then they see Rick Andover run out with a guitar and it's like, I wonder if he stole it. And then they're like, well, what should we do? And he's like, I'm calling the cops. And she's like, no, but you can call the owner of the store, whose name, of course, I know, and like they can decide to call the cops or not. And John's like, okay. And then Jennifer had this plan to run away with Rick, but he like doesn't show at the corner of Madison and La Brea at 2 a.m. when they're supposed to meet. And she's like, what's going on? But then she goes home and learns from her dad, who's a lawyer, that Rick has been arrested for stealing a guitar. And she's like, it can't be. He must have been framed. Then she decides that what must have happened was that her father framed Rick for this. And why did her father frame Rick for this? Because he must have overheard her and Rick plotting to run away. And he and the mom already have been telling this girl, he's bad news, we don't want you dating him. So Jennifer's like, oh, dad did that to frame him, to like make him go to jail so we can't run away together. And then when dad has a heart attack, she's like, well, I'm not going to the hospital because he made my boyfriend be arrested. And John's like, what do I do? Her dad is in the hospital and she's not visiting him, but she doesn't know that it was actually me that made her boyfriend get arrested. But like, I'm enjoying me being now her shoulder to cry on because she is thinking I'm this good friend. But then she keeps not going to the hospital, and Liz is like, John, you must admit the truth. Never once considering also herself disclosing to Jennifer that, by the way, I was also involved in this whole thing. And she conveniently decides to have that be a little bit of a white lie herself that she's containing. Anyhow, he tells Jennifer the truth. She is like, but my dad, and then decides to like try to go see her dad before he maybe dies, now that he wasn't the one who framed her boyfriend. She gets mad at John, then she forgives him, and her dad's fine, and everyone's fine. Right? Is that basically it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard book to bring positive vibes to, I would say.
It's stupid, it's dumb, it's boring. I do not give two fucks about Jennifer Mitchell. I resent knowing her name.
Yeah, you should. You should resent knowing her name.
And I'm just like, John Pfeiffer is not
Sucks.
someone, and I've hinted at it in the past. I've hinted that John Pfeiffer is someone that you really have to protect yourself and your heart and think about how attached we are to him.
Was this it, or is there more coming?
Oh, sweetie, this was nothing.
Oh, I thought this was it, because like, oh, he's a dick.
Oh, you think he's a dick now, Robert?
I do. Is he not?
I almost feel like I need to just tell you now. I mean, it's in the title of the book, so I'm not really spoiling. It's basically implied in the title of the book that it happens in. Can I just tell you? I feel like I have to.
How soon is it?
Good. That's a good question. Let me check.
I don't know what the answer to that question will do in terms of whether I want you to tell me or not.
I know. We're going to figure it out together. 90.
So then...
But it's not like he's in that many books. Like, is this really going to impact you that much? Like, I feel like I just need to tell you.
I do.
It's in the title and the cover of the book. Like, it's very obvious once.
Right, you know I don't see the covers, so that's not really anything.
But I mean, it's in the title. Like, the cliffhanger will tell you, basically. It won't tell you, but it'll make it obvious. So it's not like I'm spoiling a book. I'm just sort of spoiling a thing that happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
But
Is it violence?
Well, now I have to tell you. It's rape. He rapes. He's the first actual rape of someone we care about.
Wow, okay.
I'm so sorry, he's an actual rapist.
I do think we probably are going to cut this from the episode.
No, I don't think we need to. Like, who cares about him? He's not a person. Like, it's not like, oh,
I'm not trying to protect him. I just feel like, I mean, he's a fictional character.
No, but I'm saying, like, it's not like it's like, what does this change about anything? It's not like we're going to get more books about him first, I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, he's not.
This feels like a lot. I wish I didn't know this.
He's a rapist. He is a rapist.
Stop screaming it. I think we should cut this from the episode.
Fine. I know. Okay, we will. Okay.
What's the book called? Like,
it's actually funny what the book's called. No, actually, it's called Don't Go Home with John. It's called Don't Go Home with John.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that you didn't spoil it insofar as like, yeah, I would have been able to figure out.
And the front is like literally a physical struggle between him and someone we care about. Not that much. Don't worry.
It's like you're physically incapable of retaining the information.
But Robert, think about, it's like, now we've done already, 61 episodes? Think about how much stuff I haven't spoiled.
I knew you were going to go there.
No, truly, like I didn't spoil so much amazing things.
I do celebrate that.
Okay.
I
do
wish
wanna
you had
guess
spoiled this book and been like, spoiler alert, this is terrible. Don't bother reading it. You're not going to need to have read it.
I feel like I did. I feel like I was like said that on the cliffhanger. But anyway, do you want to guess the taglines?
Yeah, I wish I hadn't read this book. That's not
Mhm.
the tagline.
That's what it is.
It's just no, there's nothing to care about.
Yep.
Can John protect whatever her name is before it's too late? Jennifer, before it's too late.
No, it's will whatever her name is despise John Pfeiffer when she finds out the truth. But you know what's interesting? Remember we talked about in I think Memories or one of the books where it was like, will Kara help Stephen forget Trisha Martin? We talked about
Yeah.
why does Trisha Martin get a last name and the other one didn't? It says, will Jennifer despise John Pfeiffer when she finds out the truth? It's just interesting because John Pfeiffer is someone we know. So if anyone can get only a first name, he's at least been referenced a bunch, whereas she is completely new. So how come it doesn't say Jennifer Mitchell?
Because they know we're never going to need to hear from her again.
Yeah.
This tagline, the subtext of the tagline is, you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
John's so boring we had to give him a last name. Jennifer's so boring we didn't even bother giving her a last name. You don't care.
Well, you know what I think it actually is? By just putting Jennifer, it makes it easier to just glance at it and think it says Jessica.
So
Right?
it's like,
if it's admit,
you might care about this.
If it's at Mitchell, it's easier to see that's not Wakefield.
That is true.
Okay, on the back.
Quickly, that tagline does similar work. I feel like we've talked about this before, where it's like, can so-and-so deal with the truth? What's harm? And it's like, is it the lie that's harming her or the truth that's harming her? Unfortunately, these are characters we do not care about, so it doesn't matter. But think about a world in which we cared about these characters. Wouldn't that be something we could talk about at length?
It's hard to put myself in that. It's hard to get myself in that mindset.
That's fair. That's fair. The back is an ill-begotten guitar, ... A tricky decision, ...
Hiding the facts, ...
Okay, so that's something. So hiding the facts, ... gets at one of my central complaints about this text, which is that there are not white lies in it and that the authors do not know what a white lie is. At best, this is a lie by omission. And so it is that John is hiding the facts of who turned Rick Andover in to the cops. He's hiding the facts. Fine. At least it's accurate.
Yeah, what I was wondering was like, is it trying to actually draw our attention to that? Like by saying white lies and then they're not being lies, they're being only withholding of information. And then them sort of highlighting that and hiding the facts. Like, is there a way that that's interesting? And I'm just thinking of what that might be. Wait, hold on, give me a second. I might get there. Could it be that it's interesting because could it be that it's interesting because it forces us to say, well, wait a minute, like we're making this book be all about John's lies. Like, what lies did he actually tell? Well, he didn't. He really just sort of hid the facts. Well, it really was just this thing of omission. And by the way, at the end, Liz never disclosed it, and she did the same amount of lying as him. So if it's you know what I'm saying? So then maybe what it's saying is, but they like frame it as being worse than it is because Jennifer's dad's heart attack made it so that I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no end to that sentence. Oh, John Pfeiffer is a very kind of white, neutral, I guess casually attractive, but I would not be able to describe him in any way kind of boy. And is that Elizabeth Wakefield leaning against him?
I think it's Jennifer.
I mean, it makes more sense that it's Jennifer, but I guess Jennifer is blonde.
It's Jennifer, but that's what I think is the trick of the book. By putting the word Jennifer and having this girl and making her look almost exactly like Liz, they're making us think it's someone we care about on the book.
Okay. Wait, so is this whole thing like a masterful, like it's called White Lies? They're telling us from the beginning that all of it is like, are they playing 3D chess or maybe even 4D chess while some of us are still playing checkers?
But then it should be called like white marketing tactics. Like,
Which all of these books are white marketing tactics, so it does make sense.
I mean, because what they say in the book is that she has a cleft chin. Like, that's her just supposedly distinguishing feature. And like, she does have a more pronounced chin than the girls do. She doesn't look exactly like them.
No, I think
And
she
her
doesn't
bangs and her
yeah,
bangs are different. Like, she has a different face.
she has a different face. Yeah, she does.
But certainly at a glance, there's enough similarities that you could be forgiven for thinking this is Liz, 100%.
Thank you for your forgiveness. The other striking thing about the cover is that so John is standing above her and she is kind of leaning into the nook of his neck, but there's no other real contact. So it's like this pose is very straight. Like if his arm were around her, like holding her in, it's like, oh, that's comfort. But it's almost like she's like kind of leaning up against a wall or something. It just seems like two figures kind of superimposed on each other together rather than any kind of natural warmth or affection.
When I first looked at it, I didn't see that. Like, it looks normal to me. But after you say that, now that I keep looking, I do agree that it specifically to me, what feels like it's sort of missing or would but make it feel more connected is like you want to see his hand here
Yes,
coming
exactly.
from around, right?
Exactly.
And we'll have to clip this so the viewers can see. And of course, the listeners. So, and of course, go to our Instagram, Sweet Valley Hive, to see the book covers. But what I'm saying is, you know, a hand kind of on the other side of her shoulder would have sort of brought it all together. But listen, maybe he was in a hurry. I don't know.
Because his other arm, you can kind of see there's like a little bit of daylight in the crook of his pit. So it's almost like one of his hands is on his hip. And where's his other hand?
I think maybe they did have it and erased it because there's a little bit of a blur going on that shoulder of hers. By the way, what would you call her collar? I'm just curious since you love to talk about a collar.
Shit. I mean, she's wearing like basically a members only jacket as a top.
What you're trying to say is it's like bomber style.
Yes.
I can't. Okay. Well, let's get into this fucking dumb book.
This is going to be a hard book if you don't even have enough buy-in to criticize my collar depictions. I mean, that's one of your favorite things.
It is.
That's not a Peter Pan collar, etc.
Well,
And it never is a Peter Pan collar, listeners, because I don't know what a Peter Pan collar is, and I refuse to learn.
It's like two isosceles triangles. Is isosceles the ones where two sides are the same, right? So that's what a Peter Pan collar is. It's like this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they go like long and thin. Oh my God, that was such a good explanation. I'm smart. Okay. Let's get into the edge that runs the boat, the beginning, Robert.
Elizabeth Wakefield removed the cover from a typewriter in the Oracle office and sat down, deep in thought. Writing her weekly column for Sweet Valley High student newspaper was a constant challenge, for some reason, but one she enjoyed. She frowned slightly as she rolled a sheet of paper into the typewriter. Then she began tapping out the latest installment of Eyes and Ears. Even though it was officially a gossip column, Eyes and Ears was never spiteful or malicious. Elizabeth always kept it lighthearted, and as a rule, most people were thrilled to be featured in it. Elizabeth's blue-green eyes sparkled with amusement as she typed.
I also wrote, what is challenging about it?
Oh.
What is challenging about this gossip column?
It's a summary.
Plus, never forget that she once revealed, I think by accident,
yes,
that people submit content for it. So all she has to do is a little bit of curation and copy editing.
Yeah, it's a BuzzFeed listicle is what it is.
She's so annoying, this book. She's so Liz, this book. I mean, we're going to see
adolescent.
We're going to see it right away. So then what happens is Jessica jumps into the office and breathlessly asks her for a favor and is very dramatic about it. And she says, okay. And Jessica's going to the Dairy Burger, whatever. And then we get Liz thinking about Jessica's relationship with AJ. And for anyone that's just joining in, Jessica, you know, for 50 books almost was like always being the single girl playing the field. And she very recently has this boyfriend, AJ, the Southern redhead. And they had been together for some weeks, a record for Jessica, Elizabeth reflected. The relationship had gotten off to a rocky start due to a tangle of misunderstandings in one of Jessica's legendary plans. And to explain what had happened was that Jessica like pretended to be demure and care about homework for a book because she thought he's Southern and he likes that because he sort of told her he did. But then in the end, she like got water splashed on her in a fashion show and went back to her old self, and turned out he liked her actual self, which is not Demure. And now the two were inseparable. And as much as Elizabeth hated to admit it, gonna double click on that, she was a little surprised at how long the romance had lasted, but she was happy for her twin. All right. On a surface level, like reading,
On my level reading.
on a Robert level reading, you read this and it's like, as much as Elizabeth hated to admit it, she was a little surprised at how long the romance had lasted. And it feels very lighthearted. It's like, oh, I'm sort of embarrassed to say I didn't know it was going to last this long. Oh, what a lighthearted, like nothing benign thing. Let's keep reading. But no, because it is such a well-worn territory for Liz and Jess, the contrast between them, and Jess always criticizing Liz for being boring and too loyal to her boyfriends and not playing the field, and Liz teasing Jess that she's always playing the field. Like, this is a very well-worn trope for them. So that wouldn't be something that Liz would typically hate to admit. It would be something she would openly express, and it wouldn't be deep. So I think when it says she hated to admit it, there's actually something a little more nefarious that she's hating to admit, which is her jealousy and resentment of Jess's and AJ's relationship a little bit.
Well, I wonder, I love this. I think this is probably the most interesting thing we'll talk about all podcasts. So let's really dig in. Because I think there are a couple of different layers. Because I think there's one way I read it was, I think ever since Slam Book Fever and you planted in our heads, who wrote that Elizabeth and AJ were the next couple? I thought in the back of my head, I'm not a truther. I don't believe that Elizabeth wrote it herself. But I do believe that Elizabeth felt a bit of a frisson of excitement when she saw that. And I think one of the things she hates is that she's hot for AJ.
She is.
I think another level is that she's the boyfriend girl. That's her whole identity. She's the boyfriend twin. And so part of this that's hard for her is like, well, if I'm the boyfriend twin and Jess is the boyfriend twin, who am I? What? So there's like kind of that, we see a lot of that push and pull identity twin stuff. But I wonder about that too.
100%.
And then the third thing is, I feel like you said Jess has been famous for being kind of a flitter around her and a kind of a bon vivant and a kind of a Blanche from the Golden Girls.
A sort of frisson of sexuality.
Not exactly. Fuck, I lost it. Oh, so she wouldn't hate to admit that.
Yeah.
I think there's a part of Liz that sees Jess as fundamentally like flawed or broken and unable to have a relationship, not because she's a flitter, but because she is damaged goods. And she hates to admit that.
Yeah. Like, yes.
Wow.
It really is complex because there are a lot of pieces here, and it has to do all of it in the way that we have discussed being a thread, that like their identities are constructed, particularly for Elizabeth, because she's always the one who has an issue with it, and usually not so much Jess. When Jess starts to do the quote unquote Liz things, Liz gets very defensive and she gets very uncomfortable with this. And I think it's also the thing of like, yeah, she's supposed to be the one who like couldn't hack it with a boyfriend, or like isn't boyfriend material, or like whatever the fuck it is. And now she's doing it better than me.
Sexier
right?
than me.
How much of a dick, and because we know that for Liz, like, because remember in Say Goodbye, and we said, to what does she say goodbye? Part of it is her whole piece of her identity that's so locked up in having a boyfriend. And we see in this book, she can't even go to a party alone. So for Jessica to have a boyfriend and be kind of doing it better in some ways and knowing how to get him to hang out with her instead of his uncle, when Elizabeth can't get Jeffrey to hang out with her instead of his uncle, Elizabeth isn't happy about that. And this book could have been called, You Should Hang Out with Your Girlfriend Instead of Your Uncle. So that's a lot of the plot, is guys having uncles and hanging out with them instead of their girlfriend. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah. And I do think ideologically the book is saying you should hang out with your girlfriend instead of your uncle. And I think there's space to push back on that. I think it's a complicated issue about when you should hang out with your uncle and when you should hang out with your girlfriend.
I don't think the book is saying that. I don't think the book is saying you should hang out with your girlfriend and not your uncle. I really don't.
Okay.
You think you think the book thinks Jeffrey was wrong for going with his uncle that time? And aunt?
No.
No.
I think there's a reading for that. And
I mean, there's a read for everything.
okay,
Okay. All right.
I'm
Blah,
going
blah,
home.
blah.
We get to meet Jennifer Mitchell, which we literally don't care about. We get introduced again to Rick Andover, and the description of Rick Andover, the first time I read it was so jarring in, as Pardo would say, it's deafening silence on Rick Andover's actual faults. Because the way they describe Rick Andover is basically like he was kind of a dropout and kind of a dead end.
And I don't know if it's in the cafeteria or whatever, or at the Dairy Burger when it's like Dana and Jessica and like all these people are talking shit about him and how bad he is. It's also this thing of like, oh, he's a loser. He thinks he's going to be a successful musician, but he couldn't be successful. I'm like, why aren't you talking about the fact that he's like a predator? And he literally kidnapped Jessica and Liz and trapped them in his car and like, he's a predator. I don't care about his music career. Like,
Well, so I don't want it to go well. Because I think as a podcast, we can say, especially right now in 2024, with the way predators and music are, we don't want that. Right?
But again, it's like, same with Bruce. Like, everyone so easily forgets these violence of these guys, and it just gets like euphemism down to nothing.
It gets euphemism down to not even being mentioned.
Yeah, it gets disappeared is what it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, we learned about a new music store. So now there's 2 music stores in town because we learned about Mellow Music Shop. The other music store was in the
It's in the mall.
community. No, it was like a community center or something attached to the music where they do music lessons place, the music school. It was like in a separate place.
Where we got a recorder? Or are there 3 music stores?
Well, there's the one where because remember when Lynn Henry was teaching music class, there was a music store there because Liz went to get a record after talking about it with Enid.
True.
And being like, I love Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
Right? That was in Alone in the Crowd. Then there's the store Jess got the recorder from, which was, I think, at the mall. So that's already 2 music stores. So now we're having, but the one at the mall could be more like instruments, not buying records.
True.
But then Mellow Music
seems both. We know they have a guitar, or they used to.
It's a lot of music stores. A lot of music stores for one small town.
It feels like the recorder store has a very different vibe from Mellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not Mellow.
It feels very high strung. So John is talking about Jennifer being interested in Rick Andover, even though she knows that Rick Andover is like a dead end loser. And first, Elizabeth basically says, maybe she thinks she can help him. I mean, I know some girls think they can change a guy, reform him, which I think is just an accurate observation of a misogynistic dynamic that plays out in a lot of heterosexual, if I can say that, relationships. And then John goes on. He says, that's sick. And she's like, I don't know what to tell you. And he says, it's just wrong. That's all I'm saying. And it burns me up that she can't see what he's really like. If she wasn't so naive, he'd never get away with it. Why did she have to choose him for a first boyfriend? I just wish I could straighten her out. That's all. And so even from this very first chapter, like, oh, John's a dick bag. Like, John places all the blame on Jennifer, refers to her as naive, straighten her out.
It's like he thinks he has ownership over her. It's like he wants to control her. It's totally aggressive. It's totally inappropriate.
It's gross. And then Liz, in a measured way, says, well, it doesn't sound like she wants to be straightened out. But who knows? Maybe she'll just open her eyes one day and realize Rick's a phony. And when she opens her eyes, she'll also see you. And I feel like Elizabeth is actually giving some pretty good advice. She says, she's watched people make mistakes, but in her experience, there wasn't anything to be done about it. Most times people had to find out for themselves what they were doing wrong. Telling something what to do rarely did any good, and it often led to even more trouble. And literally at this point, I'm like, oh my God, has Liz reached a higher plane of existence? Has Liz kind of really internalized, matured, gone through several stages of development, and really has some kind of higher understanding about self and others? Listen, all you can do is be a friend to her. Just stick by her and help her when she needs help.
It's great advice.
Yeah. And this put me in a great mood for the book for a minute.
How'd you feel when chapter 2 started with Jessica blowing on the back of AJ's neck?
Horny? How did you feel?
Horny.
What about the pinball of it all?
I like that.
I mean, it must be said, it is highly erotically charged. She's blowing on the back of her neck, a lazy smile curled up at the sides of her mouth as she tried to break his concentration. Like, this is hot.
And then she croons AJ with her mouth close to his ear, and her eyes sparkle. And she's like whispering, AJ. And then he releases a ball.
This is hot. I mean, this is, in my mind,
Yeah.
the most sexually exciting pinball passage I've ever read.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. I read a lot of pinball fanfic.
It's really good.
So she's trying to distract AJ so that he'll pay attention to her. Instead, he breaks the high score and then they can finally sit down.
But then they have a seductive kiss.
And it just kind of magnifies the way that no matter what Jess wants, she gets it. So she wants him to stop playing, and so she tries to distract him, and that doesn't work, but she still gets what she wants. And she wants attention, and he gives it. Like, she's just so magnetic.
I think it also is a great contrast to, I don't know when it is. I think the beginning of the next chapter is, we've seen it a million times, Liz looking at Jeffrey from a distance. And then when we finally see them hanging out together, she's distracted thinking about John. It's like Jess and AJ have actual intimacy. It's such a contrast.
And it's hot.
Yep.
I like it.
I mean, I have to say something.
Of course.
Now, this happened once and I forgave it as a slip, but now it happened again, which is in book 6, Dangerous Love, we learned that the Dairy Burger had a makeover. They got rid of their 4 mica tables and they replaced them with wood and plants.
Yeah.
In the wood and plants style and nice leather seats. Okay. Then there was a book where we saw people leaning over a Formica table. We said, huh? But I thought they got rid of it. I said, huh? And now I'm saying I wrote Formica, huge letters, a million exclamation points, question marks. This is not acceptable, guys. Like, it's not like it was just a tiny detail. Like, they made the biggest deal. It was like half a book about this renovation, and we paid attention to it. So if we're going to invest that much, it's not nice to the readers to not be consistent.
It's also not nice to the diners.
It's also not nice to the diners. And I think we actually last time asked the question I think you posed, could it be that there's a time travel component or sort of, it may be so.
Has it been dislodged from time, I believe, or disjoint from time is my question.
Then we get UncleGate.
Yeah, how much airtime do you want to give to UncleGate?
AJ's like, Jess, we can't go to Dana's party because remember we're having dinner with my uncle. She's like, but I want to go to Dana's party. He's like, okay, we'll go to Dana's party.
The only thing that's interesting is that it's almost a Grease style tell me more gender split off, because they're having this argument publicly over the disjoint from time for mica tables in the Dairy Burger. And like Winston cuts in and Ken goes, don't let her boss you around, AJ. And I'm like, oh, Ken, do I have to worry about you now? And Maria says, stick up for your rights, Jess. And there's just this kind of like, tell me more, did you get very far, etc. kind of quality to it.
It's funny that you say that, because when I was picturing them at the pinball machine and her sort of seducing him and he's playing pinball, I was thinking of Grease for some reason. It's not that there's a pinball scene, but I was picturing for some reason Jessica sort of as Sandy in the leather or whatever. And I don't know. So it's funny.
In comes Rick Andover, and Jessica describes him as scum de la scum, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, that was great.
Just very quickly, with Jennifer's interiority, she's reflecting on the fact that everyone hates Rick, And she says, no one really understood him. Jennifer thought indignantly, not the way that she did. They didn't understand him, so they hated him instead. Her father was always reminding her about all the trouble Rick had been in. And then later in that same passage, but lately it seemed that neither one of her parents was being supportive. For the first time, Jennifer was really in love. Instead of being happy for her, her parents were acting as though she had committed a major crime. So telling them her news was definitely out of the question. And this was just, I mean, this is a more run-of-the-mill, well-observed kind of friction between child and parents. But we know that one of the central kind of concerns of adolescence is developing your own independence and developing your own kind of thought process. And so the phrasing like, I'm the only one who understands him, I'm the only one who sees this, is so in line with what we know about adolescent kind of brain development and the idea that adolescence is this kind of time of turmoil where you're unsure of your connections, whom you can trust, and you learn to rely on yourself. And oftentimes in learning to rely on yourself, you're actually totally wrong. Pardo's put in the chat, it's one of the central tasks of adolescence, separating from the parent. Exactly. I would love it if you're typing again, I just love it if you could just voice these concerns.
But I'm eating my gummies.
Right, I do see that does present a problem. I just wish, you know.
When I did that before the podcast?
No, I want you to do it during the podcast. I just want you to talk while you're eating your gummies.
Okay.
But sorry, so just very, very, very quickly. This idea that you are the only one who sees something, you're the only one who understands something, is a hallmark of adolescent egocentrism and is interesting and well observed.
Yeah, you literally just said that.
Well, sorry, you were interrupting me to make other points and chomp on your gummies.
You already made your point, and I didn't interrupt you by definition. I put it in the chat. Oh my God. That's gaslighting what you just did. I put it in the chat. That's specifically to not interrupt you. You're rude. Okay, you want to say it one more time? Okay, guys, the central task of adolescence is saying me, 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 me. Okay, next.
Seems like some of us are still resolving that task, aren't we? We, aren't we?
You're rude. Elizabeth is looking at Jeffrey from the bleachers.
A kind of lesbianic remove that we've come to know and love.
We get John tells her that Jennifer's going to run away with Rick, and she says, stay out of it.
You can't control a person, even if it's for good reason. You can't protect Jennifer from herself. Maybe Jennifer will realize what Rick's really like before it's too late. You've got to trust her, you know. But if she's going to go, there's no way you can stop her. But if you turn her in, she'll never forgive you. You'll end up losing her friendship for sure. This is interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the one hand, it is good advice. You can't control people. You can't tell people what to do. And on the other hand, when people are posing a harm to themselves or others, it is appropriate to seek out support and help for them.
Yeah, and like if they're a kid and they're doing something dangerous, like running away, not necessarily a situation where you maybe shouldn't say anything.
Right? So at first I was like, yeah, Liz. And then I was like, well, I guess.
Would you do that? If you were in high school and your friend told you they were like doing this, you'd call their parents and tell them?
I have
or
no
like you
idea.
tell your parents and make them do it? Like, what would you do? I'm like, would I? I don't know. Would I just sort of look the other way and be like, okay, send me a postcard? I don't know.
I would definitely tell my parents and have my parents deal with it. That feels like very vintage Robert Marks.
Fair enough. I mean, if your parents were the Wakefields, they'd make you do it because they make their children make phone calls to other adults when their kids are running away. But anyway.
Famously, they've done that several times. They're also, in their defense, very, very busy. Alice has a full-time job as an interior designer, and so she cannot be making dinner. Jessica has to make lasagna.
Yeah, and then when they're not at work, they have to be at their sex dungeon. So,
which we haven't got a lot of, and I honestly am a little concerned about the kind of persona of sexuality in their relationship.
Me too. Okay, then we get Jessica on the edge of the soccer field with her friends, and she's being flirtatious with a boy, and the boy is Mike Schmidt, who's some guy. And the soccer players are coming from practice or something.
Some guy, Pardo? He's got really muscular
nice legs.
Not just some guy to us.
I love, so she's like, keep your eye on the ball. Oh, what kind of penalty are you going to give me?
She's
And
so
then
sexy.
then they're flirting and he walks away and she's grinning and it says she loved flirting. It made life so much more interesting. It's just funny. Just like her thinking to herself, I love flirting.
I literally within the week have said that out loud to someone.
I
I
love
love
flirting.
flirting.
It makes life so interesting.
I don't know that I said it makes life more. I think I said it makes life more fun. I think it's true. I love flirting.
You are a big flirt.
I'm a big old flirt, remember? Remember our good days getting that tea?
And then AJ comes back and there's a little bit of an awkward moment. Is AJ sort of being uncomfortable about Jessica's flirting and we're not sure, but he doesn't say anything and he looks so gorgeous that she just decides to assume everything's fine, which we don't really have reason to think it's not, and she's happy and they go on their date or whatever.
So then we get UncleGate Part 2.
This time it's personal.
This book thinks so little of us that it makes it the exact. I mean, they couldn't even pick a different relative. It literally is the uncle again.
That's why it's like this book is about going places with your uncle or not. Like literally, like yeah, they didn't want us to have to really do a lot of work.
And I didn't. So we get Jeffrey saying, I can't make it to Dana's party tomorrow night. My aunt and uncle are coming down from Oregon. Sorry. Elizabeth tried not to let her disappointment show. One thing she had been looking forward to all week was spending Friday night with Jeffrey. That's okay. I understand. I do think the book is kind of trying to tell us that the right thing to do is to not tell Jeffrey that you're disappointed. And the right thing for Jeffrey to do is to read her disappointment and involve her in some way. Because also he simply could have been like, come out to dinner with us. And he didn't.
Whoa.
What?
Wait a minute.
Oh, have I fucked up?
No, I think you're landing, perhaps accidentally. I don't know if you realize this, but you're pointing out actually something really interesting.
Almost certainly accidentally, you've said something that I think someone might care about. Huh. What's that thing about acorns and squirrels getting one every once in a while? Continue.
Did you see the Loving Chipmunks?
Did you see the Loving Chipmunks?
We haven't yet raised the point that between UncleGate 1 and UncleGate 2, this time it's personal. We've compared them in the sense that like they're both situations where the guy wants to go to his uncle instead of Dana's party. And we said Jessica got AJ to skip the uncle thing and come to Dana's instead, but Elizabeth doesn't ask Jeffrey to skip it or whatever and like decides to not go to her party herself and he goes to uncle and aunt. But we haven't until now raised the point that AJ invited Jess to go with him to his family, and Jeffrey did not invite Liz to go with him to his aunt and uncle. And that, I think, could be considered interesting. Because it adds, obviously...
I didn't stumble into this.
Because it does add, it sort of heightens the freezing of tension for Elizabeth of, you know, why am I not being the one asked to go to someone's uncle?
Well, also, I mean, the interiority is one thing she's been looking forward to all week was spending Friday night with Jeffrey. She doesn't care about going to Dana's party. She just wants to be with Jeffrey. And she could be with Jeffrey. But she is unwilling to voice... What?
If he wanted her to come to his aunt and uncle, which he didn't really is. Yeah, because he's normal and he thinks, if I'm a 16-year-old girl, do I want to be with someone's fucking aunt and uncle from Oregon where all they're going to talk about is
composting?
Yeah. Or
again,
do I want to be at a cool party at Dana's? Well, I have a boring girlfriend who probably rather hang out with my aunt and uncle from Oregon. I'd actually rather hang out with someone's aunt and uncle from Oregon than go to a party, probably.
Same. The aunt and uncle from Oregon, I bet they've experienced death. I bet they've touched grief.
They probably smoke weed.
They definitely smoke weed.
They're cool. They can hang.
They seem
Okay.
like they can hang. I mean,
I
are
wonder
they
if
vegan?
Jeffrey's.
Probably. That's fine.
How come we haven't gotten anything about Jeffrey's parents? Like, we used to get like Mrs. Wilkins once in a while, some dynamics in the home. Like,
Oh,
we
yeah.
never have we even been to Jeffrey's home?
I haven't. And if you were
Have
there, I
we,
wasn't invited.
have we had anything of him like in his home life? No.
I can't think of it. I can't picture
Wow.
something.
That's
Powerful stuff.
rude.
We know he has an
Okay.
aunt and uncle. They're coming down from Oregon.
Okay, chapter 4, John and Liz go to follow Rick. Then I think we should read the passage about when the guitar sort of disappears. Elizabeth and John are in the car, and they see Rick cross the street to Mellow Music Shop where he works. A streetlight illuminated the front window of the shop, spotlighting a drum set, an amplifier, and a gleaming electric guitar. Rick disappeared into the alley beside the shop. John and Elizabeth waited in tense silence. They're like, what's he doing? I don't know. Something's going on. Maybe there's a perfectly good reason. A fleeting, stealthy movement in the darkness caught her eye. John! Elizabeth grabbed his arm. While they watched, the electric guitar rose up and disappeared into the black emptiness of the shop. A patch of light outlined a hand gripping the neck of the guitar before it vanished. He's stealing it, she breathed, her heart pounding. He's robbing the store. Why is it written this way? It's so wild.
Why does she care? I just don't like what watching him commit a crime suddenly put a whole new light on things. He's stealing a guitar from a store. Who cares? Also, you.
What's really fucking also crazy about it is it says she thinks it wasn't just a matter of jealousy between John and Rick anymore. If Rick had robbed the music store, he could get Jennifer in serious trouble. I'd go, how?
Well, if she's found with possession of stolen goods, that is a crime. My first thought was also he works there and he's a musician. It could be his guitar.
Or there could be a lot of reasons for it. Yeah. Then Liz is like, okay, don't call the cops, call the owner, because maybe there is a good reason for it. And then it's up to him to call.
You can't gloss over your hilarious point from earlier. That she happens to know the name of the owner of the Mellow Music Store, Luke Lander, and the improbably named Luke Lander.
And they gave us his number, so we all the readers now have Luke Lander's number.
For a good time or music, call 555-1793.
Chapter 5, Jess basically drags Liz and says, like, wow, like, you don't even know how to make your boyfriend not go to his uncle and come to the party instead. And Liz is like, she's like, couldn't you make him go? And she's like, I'm not in charge of his schedule. He had a family obligation. And Jessica's like, well, so did AJ, but I got him to switch. He'll do anything for me, anything I ask. And then she goes, listen, you want to hear my philosophy about men? And Liz is being Dorothy Zbornak and is like, not really, but you'll tell me anyway. And Jess goes, my theory about men is you have to make them do what you want. Otherwise, they'll never think of it themselves.
Elizabeth remained silent.
And then they're like back and forth on this. And Jess is like, Liz, I guess you can't help it if your relationship isn't perfect like ours. I bet you never thought we'd last so long, did you? And then she turns on her sister. Did you? And Liz is like, I don't know. I never, We get Jennifer Mitchell getting stood up at Madison and La Brea.
Yeah, I was just looking back at the actual way that Jess handled AJ. And I think most of it happened off screen.
Mm-hmm. Because they were like, we'll talk about it privately.
But it just like the way that Elizabeth says, so I should just order him to go to the party. I was like, well, Jess is purporting to have done that. But you could have at least said, I want to spend time with you. It's like Liz, she started this book so mature, and now she like can't even talk about her own feelings, let alone anybody else's.
Well, it's like, yeah, she can do for other people what she can't do for herself, which is emotional maturity.
apparently.
Chapter 6.
You didn't want to read Liz's journal entry? Kidding.
That's good. Whatever. Do you want to read the debate about the perfect vacation?
I didn't care or make anything of it. Did
I
you?
don't either. We can skip it. But it's like basically, I think just the thing to remark on is like there's this conversation where Jess is like, the perfect vacation is going to LA or New York and partying. And AG's like, oh, it sounds like if I did that, I would need a vacation from my vacation. I'd like to be in the mountains. And then it's like all the kids are like, mountains, party, mountains, party. And it's like suddenly everyone cares. And then it's like, Liz, what would you want? And she's like, I would actually want the mountains. And she's like, but I don't want to get involved in this. And then she leaves and then AJ's like, fine, I'll say the New York vacation's the best. And Liz is leaving thinking, wow, like I don't know how long Jess and AJ are gonna last if they keep having these disagreements. And she just keeps trying to like coerce him. I'm like, what? This is like a hypothetical debate that doesn't matter. This is nothing. What are you saying?
I
She just
do
wants them to break up.
Yeah, she is lizzing herself about all sorts of things. Chapter 6 also contains kind of Jennifer's self-gaslighting or whatever.
Yeah.
Her convincing herself that what happened is not only is Rick not actually guilty of stealing the guitar, but her father framed Rick. An idea took shape in her mind. Something in her father's tone made Jennifer suspicious. She was convinced someone had framed Rick, and a glimmer of an idea had just occurred to her. If her father had eavesdropped on the phone call with Rick the night before, if he knew they were planning to run away together, he could have set Rick up in order to throw a wrench into their plans. Mr. Mitchell had never made a secret of how much he despised Rick. Putting him in jail was just the sort of thing her father would do, Jennifer decided with growing certainty. Jennifer thought she remembered the faint click of another phone extension being replaced before she'd hung up the phone. In an instant, she was absolutely sure that her father had listened in. This was one of the moments that drove my 6-word review, where I was like, this is infuriating to read. As an adult, beautiful person, to read this, it's just like, oh my God, this is so tedious and tiresome, and she's such an idiot. And developmentally, of course, like, she believes that she is the holder of some special truth. She is enmeshed in her own fable. So much of adolescence is about telling your own story and this kind of deluded self-belief that you are special and unique. And we see that time and time again. We see that in like when youth engage in risky behavior, they do it because of the adolescent fable that they feel like, oh, other people may get hurt, but I won't get hurt. And so it's this kind of belief in specialness that drives, oh, I can see who Rick really is, even though everyone else can't. I know that Rick was framed. I can see all of this stuff. It's such classic adolescent appropriate thought, and it is so annoying.
And it's also in a more basic way, I guess, just like denial, right? Like,
yeah,
Rick stealing is like something that she doesn't like. And like that's too much for her, right? So then in order for her to like sense make, given that he was arrested for this can't be true. And if it's not true, it means someone made it up. And then her dad's going to be that person. And that conveniently allows her to keep getting angry at her dad. So.
We get the like classic, you'll never understand me, you've ruined my life, the screaming, the yelling, the crying. We get the introduction of a new teacher, Mr. Hamilton. I was like, oh my God, wait, but science, we know our science teachers, but then I remembered, of course, Jennifer's a sophomore. So we learned that Mr. Hamilton teaches sophomore biology.
Who's our junior bio teacher? Is there one?
No, it's chem. We're in a chemistry class.
Oh, so they don't have bio? They take different science every year? Okay.
Wait, what is that not Canadian?
I don't remember. Maybe that was how it was, actually. Yeah, I think that was how it was. Like, John and Jennifer spend some time together. She's comforted by him. He's thinking this feels nice. We have Jessica and AJ at tennis. And it's like she loves tennis and wants him to do the activity she likes, and turns out he's bad at tennis. And then it also gives them a chance to like meet the girl who's going to be in the next book, Kristen. But I did think it was interesting that it was like such a contrast to Playing for Keeps. Like in Playing for Keeps, Jessica was doing this extreme of pretending to like all the things AJ liked and sort of tiring them both out by like making them do all these activities that he liked. And then she like settled back into her normal self, but was like still a little bit more neutrally. And now she's just being a little more pushy and like wanting to do what she wants and like getting him to do that. And the question is like, is he going to be cool with it or not? And Liz is hoping he's not, but we'll see.
We do get some like very brief, good sports writing. Jess is good at coaching AJ about how to play a little bit better.
Pascal's heartburn.
I mean, Robert's heartburn. Listeners may not know this, but I had a stomach bug. And do you know, did I tell you this, that I thought I was having a heart attack the whole time?
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I was sure I was having a heart attack. Because one of the symptoms of a heart
I thought
attack.
you were joking because I texted you about.
Sometimes I use humor to kind of cover what's real. I was never having a heart attack, thankfully, but like I was at an event and suddenly had a bout of nausea, and then my heart was racing and I felt very dizzy, and all of that is actually heart attack symptoms. And then my chest started hurting a lot, and I was like, oh no, this is terrible. This is a heart attack. But of course, unlike Mr. Mitchell, it actually was heartburn and not a heart attack. And he was having a heart attack and not heartburn. And so we're different.
Wow.
Yeah. But last night in bed, right before bed, Martin and I were talking about like what was going on. And I was like, well, yeah, but you really can never be too careful. I mean, Mr. Mitchell thought it was just heartburn. And he goes, I literally just said that. And it turned out to be something much worse and needed surgery.
Did you really? Did he
literally,
really say that?
I said that.
That's
and then
amazing.
Martin goes, Mr. Mitchell? I was like, yeah, Jennifer Mitchell's dad. He was like, do we know her?
You're like, he works at Wells and Wells.
Oh, I should have
from
that.
Wells and Wells.
Yeah,
Wells and
you know
Wells.
Wells and Wells. But then I finally let him in on the fact that she was just a boring character in a book.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad it was just heartburn for you.
I wish it were not heartburn for, I mean, I'm sorry that it's, I don't wish ill on Mr. Mitchell. I'm sorry. I wish it were just heartburn for Mr. Mitchell, but we find out that it's not.
I mean, I'm happy to skip to chapter 8. Jennifer finds out her dad's in the hospital and doesn't go because she thinks he did it.
I am reminded that we live in a capitalist system in the opening of chapter 8, where we get another reference to the slam books, where it's like, wow, they really want people to buy those slam books, don't they? And we get it. I do want to buy one.
Oh, I didn't think of that. All I thought was, ooh, fun. We get to hear about slam books again.
That's how they get you. They
That
lull you
makes
in.
sense. It's another situation of like there being a potentially awkward moment of like, oh, is AJ seeing like now the real Jessica to the extent that he's going to be turned off by her flirtatiousness because the girls are talking about who at Sweet Valley High is the best kisser, and AJ is seeming a little bit peeved about this and flushing Scarlet and running off. And Jessica's like, but everything's fine.
How'd you know exactly what was going on there? For me.
I think he was uncomfortable.
I think he was uncomfortable, but why?
Well, I think it's because I think it's because he's insecure and he thinks she's interested in other guys. Because then later he goes to Liz and says, oh, Liz, I'm worried Jessica's getting bored of me.
Yeah.
Which I thought was such an important moment.
Great.
Because you think what he's going to say is like, oh, Liz, is Jessica always this flirty or kind of thing? But it's like, oh, no, he's concerned about, it's not that he's turned off by her. It's that he's concerned how she feels about him. So for me, that was the moment that explained what was going on. And I think, and then Liz thinks to herself, because Jessica runs in a few minutes later, whatever, to see AJ at their house, Liz is like, oh, I'm worried that Jess isn't as committed to the relationship as he is. It's like, no, you want him for yourself. But like, that was the moment that showed me that like, Jess and him are actually fine.
Yeah, I love that. That was very important to me because I just really like the way that we are getting a look at AJ and an understanding that he actually doesn't seem to care that much that she's flirty or that she's talking about kissing other boys, as long as she still wants to kiss him after all.
Yeah.
And that's very sweet. I love that.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. And it's a relief because we want to like him. We don't want him to be like slut shamey.
Exactly. And he isn't. He seems sex positive. Speaking of sex positivity,
Bypass surgery.
no, recorder time.
Oh,
We get a recorder
okay.
back out in a book of Baroque flute solos. Head into the
Mhm.
backyard with Prince Albert. Sexy.
Bypass surgery.
Fine.
Mr. Mitchell is having bypass surgery. Jennifer's not going to the hospital. John tells Liz he feels guilty because, like, blah, blah. Liz says, well, John, you have to tell her that, like, actually, it was you who got Rick arrested, not her dad, so that she'll go see him before his bypass surgery. Again, never remembering that she was also involved.
Right.
And he's
And that
like,
because she's not actually involved, because she's not emotionally involved in Jennifer and John at all, she could tell Jennifer with no consequences at all.
mhm. And then basically it's like he's like, I don't know. And she basically convinces him to do the right thing and is like, I'll drive you. And then they go to the Mitchell's house and Jennifer's there alone because her mom's at the hospital. And he tells her.
And then she gets upset with him and is like, I need to go see my dad. And then, in certainly the best scene from the book,
Mhm.
Jennifer says, Jennifer says, I need to go see my father. And John was like, do you need a ride? And Jennifer's like, yeah, I do. And then John, impotent, is like, well, actually, Liz drove me. I'm sure she'll give us a ride. Then Jennifer says, can you give me a ride? Sure, no problem, but you guys will have to double up. As you can see, there's a small back seat, but it's full of Jessica's stuff. She was supposed to clean it out, but you know Jessica. A flush of embarrassment washed over John as he clambered into the passenger seat. Jennifer sat stiffly on his lap as though she couldn't stand to touch him, but didn't have a choice. I just thought this was truly, truly, truly hilarious.
It was hard for him to have her so close. He could feel how angry she was by her tense, unyielding muscles.
So there's so many different things I love about this. This is in some ways kind of the like fanfic version of checking into a hotel, but there's only one bed. Like, oh, you could sit in the back seat, but it's full of stuff. And it's like, well, we could unpack the stuff very easily. Or we could leave John here because he does not need to go to the hospital at all. So we could ride in comfort, and then I could come back for John.
No, that scenario doesn't make sense. Sorry. That
Really?
doesn't make sense. Like, obviously, John's gonna go. Like, Elizabeth doesn't even know her barely.
Knows her well enough to follow her boyfriend and
Well, they get to the hospital, but he's already, it turns out, in surgery, and they're all like, oh my gosh. But what if he doesn't survive the surgery? Then Jennifer will never have been able to tell her, I'm sorry, you weren't the one who tipped off about my guitar taking boyfriend.
you got there at the end.
For chapter 10, my notes are nonsense at hospital, concert tickets dilemma. Those are my two notes for chapter 10.
For chapter 10,
Like, basically, Mr. Mitchell ends up fine, and John and Elizabeth convinces her to forgive John, and everyone's fine. Right?
the thing that I do like is Jessica gives Elizabeth a talking to. And it's like, since when do you drive around Jennifer Mitchell and John Pfeiffer? I swear you let people just walk all over you. Anything they want, you do. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, that is exactly what's happening.
I don't really see it that way, because it's not like Jennifer and John are so taking advantage of Liz. Like, she wants to be involved in this. Like, she gets herself involved. It's not like she's manipulated or walked over. Like, she's asking for this, sort of.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, she's obviously talking also about Jeffrey, kind of, but
I think I mean, there's a scene very early on. I mean, some would call it the engine that drives the boat, where Jess has this, you alluded to it, like this incredibly stupid, like everyone's going to the Dairy Burger. I need to go to Dairy Burger. Can you do this laundry for me? And Liz just says yes. So I think we do see scenes of Liz getting walked all over.
Yeah.
And I think there's something tangled about your point. Like, well, Liz wants this. She wants to be involved. And it's like, she does want it, but there's something there. There's something messy and weird in her psychology.
Well, I don't think Liz, for example, resents the way she's been involved with Jennifer and John. Like, I think in that way, she pretty much has gotten herself into it in a lot of ways. But like the people that are not walking all over her, but like maybe she's not asserting herself with in a way she does resent is Jessica and then Jeffrey, maybe. So it's like, it is complicated.
Yeah.
Enid is starting a Big Sisters program for motherless and underprivileged girls.
Yeah. So
nothing to see here.
Elizabeth is just so moved by this. Her first reaction, she nods. The more she thought about it, the more she liked it. Elizabeth knew her older brother, Stephen, had made growing up special for her, even if he was a pain at times. It's like, wait, Liz, you're not motherless. Is this your mother wound that immediately connects you from hearing about motherless other people to thinking about how it relates to yourself?
That's funny.
It's also just like truly the way that they went out of their way to refer to these children as motherless felt really, really powerful to me.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And sorry, but like motherless kids probably would benefit from some kind of peer mentoring program. But like the kids at Sweet Valley High are not what these motherless children need. So I keep saying motherless, which I don't love.
Well, I think you're quoting from the text. They're motherless and underprivileged. Today we would probably call them under-resourced.
We would.
Guardianless. We'd say they're guardianless, under-resourced kids.
They're wards of the state, likely.
Mm.
Potentially, at least. So I thought that was interesting. And then immediately she acknowledges that Enid has done all the planning. Enid is putting in the oracle, and Elizabeth's like, okay. And then Elizabeth feels a sense of enormous satisfaction from this, as if she has done something really, really powerful and great.
Yeah, because Elizabeth has a savior complex and is obsessed with patting herself on the back for doing fucking nothing.
And then later, Jess starts getting interested, and Liz is like, wait, that's my thing. It's like, no, it's Enid's thing. It's not your thing at all. What are you talking about?
And like, wow, Liz, like it really shouldn't be about whose thing it is.
Yeah.
Okay, blah, blah, more nonsense with the A-plot. That's fine.
Liz goes to the hospital concession stand or whatever you call it. She buys flowers. The selling person, the florist, says, oh, here's a card. Make sure you write out the card. She goes up and we learn that she has written the card as if John wrote it. This to me feels maybe the closest to a white lie in the whole book.
Oh, I misunderstood that. I think you're right, but I think I had read it as, I thought he like wrote a card, gave it to Liz, and then she was like, let me buy some flowers to go with it. But I thought he had written initially a card. Okay, you're right. I understand.
So this is the one white lie. And it's just like we see, and this is true, what we know about development is that it's not linear and it fits and starts, and sometimes we're back at the beginning again. But it's like Liz started being like, you should be honest with people. You can't control people. And now she's like lying and buying flowers on John's behalf and all that. It's like, you duplicitous little minx.
Yeah, well, she loves to do ridiculous things and rationalize them.
She's a messy bee. And then they reconcile and there's nothing interesting.
Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
Liz is confused because she sees Jess and AJ and they seem so happy together. And she's like, what's going on? And then she hears Jess sort of saying that like she started this or implying that she started the Big Sister thing. And Liz is like, huh. So we're supposed to read this as, oh, Jess and AJ were legit having problems because he wasn't liking how flirtatious or irresponsible, whatever the fuck. But then this supposed lie, white lie of like just doing the big sisters thing, like tricked him into thinking she's good again. So that's why the relationship's good. It's like that's what Liz is thinking, and I think that's what the book is implying. Like if we're supposed to be in Liz's perspective, I feel like the book is saying things are weird with Jess and AJ, and this is just a temporary band-aid lie that she's doing about the big sisters. But like that's not what I believe. I believe things are legit good with Jess and AJ, and like Liz is full of shit. What do you think?
No, I think I think Liz is definitely full of shit. I think things are good with Jess and AJ. I think the book is saying things are good with Jess and AJ.
But then why does it have it end on them being good and just having sort of told this big sister lie and him seeming to really respond to it, you know?
I mean, he doesn't respond to it.
He
I guess he says
does.
admiringly,
Yeah.
but he's already said he's worried about her getting
Because
bored
otherwise
So-
why include that? Yeah.
because I think this is my kind of reading. We get Elizabeth's interiority, and she says, I must have made too big a deal out of Jess and AJ's differences. Maybe they know how to work things out after all. But if Jessica patched things up by telling lies to make AJ admire her, what kind of relationship was that? With that kind of deception, how long could Jessica's romance with AJ last? And I think we as readers are supposed to be like, the fuck? You just engaged in deception to patch up the relationship between Jennifer and John. So you're a hypocrite. And I think we're supposed to be seeing that kind of duality there. And that's why this is included.
Okay, so I agree that I think we're supposed to be seeing as it's supposed to highlight that she's a hypocrite because she just made a lie to patch up John and Jennifer. But I think the book is saying, so doing that is wrong and not sustainable, and how long can it last? Like that's a fake patch up, you know? So I think it's inviting us to then say it was wrong in Jennifer and John, and it was wrong in Jess and AJ. Or it's inviting us to say, well, if it was okay in Jennifer and John, is it okay in Jess and AJ? Oh, is this book really interesting?
No,
That's interesting.
the book is that what you said is interesting. The book is not. Just keep
But
that,
maybe that
keep
is
that
what
as your
the
North
book is.
Star.
But maybe that is what the book is asking. Whatever. Okay, then we get the cliffhanger, which is some girl plays tennis, right? What is it? Will she play tennis too much or not enough? Will she ever go to the beach or will she be always playing tennis? What is it?
So she's playing tennis, this girl, Kristen. We've met her now several times.
Always
don't
with a
care.
tennis racket.
Always tennising.
Her to tennis is Bill Chase to a surfboard.
That makes sense. All the cool kids are going to the beach, so Liz runs over and tries to controllingly get Kristen to go to the beach because she feels like she knows better than what Kristen wants. And Kristen keeps saying no and no. She does turn slightly pink as she smiles at Bruce, so watch that space. And then Bruce and Liz head back. Elizabeth cast one last look back at Kristen. She had heard Kristen was a dedicated tennis player, and that certainly seemed to be the case. Elizabeth wondered if there was any way at all to tempt Kristen to do something other than play tennis. If she wouldn't go to the beach on a blistering hot Friday, she probably wouldn't do anything else. Is Elizabeth right? Is it true there's nothing that will tear Kristen away from the tennis court? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 53. Second chance for some reason?
That's crazy. That's a crazy cliffhanger and so that like it's like literally the cliffhanger is this girl ever not playing tennis?
And the answer is, I think no. I think she's almost always playing tennis. Except maybe if she has thoughts for Bruce.
Remember we had a book called Last Chance that was not about last chances? And like,
Yeah.
you know, this book is not going to be about second chances. It's going to be about, is she always playing tennis? There's not going to be a second chance in this book.
We did hear earlier in the text.
Yes, about a dead mom who was a tennis doer or something.
It's dead mom or dead sister?
Oh, I don't know.
It's a dead someone. It's a dead family member.
Yeah, so maybe it's a second chance of like something for that person. Fine. Okay. Well, I guess we'll do that.
Well,
if you are fighting with your boyfriend, if he should go to
always.
his uncle or to a cool party, then either you convinced him or you didn't. If you did convince him, you deserve a reward. And your reward should be rating and reviewing our podcasts, subscribing, and sending it to a friend.
Your reward then is like getting a community of listeners because you're listening to this podcast now and you want other people to talk about it with. So the reward you deserve is like pulling more people into the fold. And the way you do that is by rating, reviewing, and sharing the podcast.
And doing that is actually being a community organizer. And actually, Barack Obama used to be a community organizer. So you could be president one day if you do that. And if you didn't convince your boyfriend to hang out with you instead of his uncle, then we feel sad for you. And then you also deserve a reward, which is to be a community organizer and to share our podcast with everyone you know and rate and review and subscribe. And you really have to rate and review. There aren't enough. Listen.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.